it is. Obviously, it's optional how you start. So, Mr. Judge, I think we're ready.
So we start with the entry. It's nice and straight. Obviously the horse is a little bit tense in the situation, but the rider manages well to keep it straight. Direct transition. The halt is absolutely straight from this point. I can't see the hind legs, so I don't take so much of that into account, but the good transition forwards and lovely, regular, springy, active trot. So ends up starting with a good mark for an 8. This extended trot begins in nice balance. It's regular ground covering. A little bit more collection perhaps at the end, but still again it's for a good mark for an 8. And the shoulder in, nicely cadenced, with the hind legs slipping slightly off the center line for a couple of steps, takes the score down to just a fairly good mark, which is a 7. Looks good again for an 8 on the circle. And the half pass, nicely positioned. Just a little more self-carriage and lightness in the contact, but otherwise it's between fairly good and good, so it gets the 7.5 points. Rein back again a little bit more self-carriage, but again it was fluent both in and out. Half pass to the left I think is very nice, very fluent, but needs more engagement of the hind leg. So it's between fairly good and good. And it's a bit the same picture also on the circle. Good rhythm, but a little bit more engagement. It's fairly good. Same picture again in the shoulder in. The hind legs could be more exactly on the center line. It's a difficult movement to show, but that's fairly good. Medium trot is really good. The collected walk, clear in 4 beats. Could be actually a little bit more collected, but it's active and regular in the rhythm. So it gets a fairly good mark, which is a 7. There's a clear difference. The extended walk, the horse lengthens its strides and its frame. It stays in a clear 4 beat. It's for a good mark again, another 8. A little bit more collection could be shown there, and the transition itself just a touch straighter, but still it's in the fairly good area. So another 7. Starts this zigzag very fluently, but the flying change itself lost a touch of balance. Next half pass was good, and the flying change. And the last flying change could be perhaps just a bit straighter, but again it's in the fairly good area, gets another 7. Extended canter is good, covering ground, gets an 8, and the return and flying change also, it could be a little more uphill, but it still gets the good mark. All that's missing for the very high scores is a little bit more lightness and self-carriage. But you can see in these flying changes that is achieved very well and would get a very good score of a 9. Comes now towards the first pirouette. You can see the horse taking more weight on the hind legs, keeps the bend, started a little bit big, but finishes very well and would score in between fairly good and good, meaning a 7.5. Flying change was really good, between an 8 and a 9, so it gets 8.5. Second pirouette was smaller and more consistent, so gets a slightly higher mark, at least for an 8. And again, the flying change was really good. These 2 time changes, very fluent, uphill, and expressive. Just the neck could be a little straighter, but they get still a very good mark for a 9. However, the transition, which should be at C, slightly failed, and now we have to come down into the lower range, and she will get a 5 for that. Then up again, a good extended trot, a nice clear transitions for a good mark, another 8. Straight on the center line, and the halt also straight, could be a little more square, but a good mark again. And for the rider's score too, it's about how they sit, and she sits beautifully and influences the horse in a really good way. Only that one minor problem with the transition, otherwise the riding would get a very good score. But because of that, she would get an 8.5 for the riding, and I'm hopeless with mathematics, but I think she's in a fairly high percentage, don't you?
Well,
Congratulations.